Dispatching all biters. My quest to free the country of zombies. Mystic Alchemist. Copyright 2020 Mystic Alchemist. All rights reserved. Written in Australian English. This book is a work of fiction. Names, characters, places and incidents are either a product of the author's imagination or are used fictitiously. Any resemblance to actual people living or dead, events or locales is purely coincidental. Chapter 2. Next door. Backpack still in my left hand, I opened my apartment door, the corridor ahead empty but still noises from next door. I decided to knock and see if she was okay. My excuse would be to ask her to keep an eye on my apartment for a few days. That reason was safe enough. As I knocked, the noises inside came louder and seemed to be coming closer. Not words, more moaning like I'd heard all night. They couldn't still be at it. You okay? Still no words, but the moaning was real close, and then there was banging on the door, like fists on the wood. Do you need help? The banging got worse. I was no hero, but I couldn't leave her with that brute if I could help it. The doorknob turned by hand and I felt the latch click free, letting me press the door open a little. The banging stopped, but the door was heavy to move. It's only me, but my throat was dry and the words struggled to be heard. I pressed harder and had enough space to see into the room a little, enough to see the links of a gold security chain stopping the door opening much more. You need any help? I croaked. My feet flew back a step without me willing it. It was a man's hand poking through the gap in the doorway, the fingers splayed out, forcing the door further apart and making a loud moaning sound. But that wasn't all. The hand. His hand. That hand was covered with dark congealed blood, and then there was a pale almost white eye higher in the gap with a mouth that was spitting toward me as it hissed. Zombie. My shaking legs calmed a little while that withered mouth continued its hissing and the hand continued to reach out. Too many games. That had to be it. Or a bad dream. I often had dreams about the games, it was part of the fun. Am I awake or asleep, and how would I know? If it was a dream, what would I do? Easy. I'd stab that zombie and save the day. How many thousands had I already dispatched? And if it was real, what should I do? The same was the only answer I could think. Making the decision calmed my mind, turning me to gamer mode. I knew exactly what to do now. My backpack open and with one of the long screwdrivers in my right hand I approached the door again. No need to think. Blade straight through the half-dead eye. It was harder than in the game, there seemed much more resistance to my stab and that bloody hand was reaching to grab mine. I had to pull my stabbing hand back, his eyeball popping out with my screwdriver. Yuck. Again I speared my screwdriver into that eye socket. This time the screwdriver was right into the plastic handle, the edge of my hand touching his face, but the zombie was still moving. In the middle of the brain I remembered, this was too much to the side. With that hand still over my arm, I wrenched the screwdriver back and drove it forward again, this time aiming through the left nostril and up into the brain. Instant success, his head now a dead weight on my hand, the chain arresting his fall with me still holding that screwdriver up his nose. When I pulled the weapon out, his body fell noisily to the ground, pushing the door closed with his weight. It didn't bother me, I was too busy leaning against the wall shaking. When my legs became solid enough to stand unaided, I went back to the door concerned for her, but I wasn't pleased to still hear moans coming from inside. Softer, sweeter moans. Of course that brute would have infected her. That thought gave me power and I pushed against the door, pressing that dead weight away, the gold chain fully extended and her head in the gap. The rose red of her lips replaced with blood. Her perfect blue eyes now pale and diseased. Her perfectly manicured fingers now reaching out to me. It gave me no pleasure when the screwdriver went in through her nose, her fingers leaving bloody handprints on my sleeve. I was able to undo the chain and push both their bodies far enough to enter the room myself. The stink had me retching, but I managed to shut the door, leaving the gore inside as I took in the room. Simple one-room apartment like mine, but this one had blood everywhere. Looking down at her, she still looked pretty, looking as though a good clean and she would be the same woman I dreamt about every day. I couldn't leave her like this, so I reached down and lifting her between her arms dragged her to her bed. She had no top, and I could see what had happened. He must have been infected first, most likely at that stupid protest. There would have been an hour or so while the infection worked throughout his body, and in that time she'd brought him home and maybe been ready for some serious cuddling. He'd turned and then bitten her right boob, the bite marks were clear. From then on, it was only a matter of time until she joined him amongst the undead. My eyes wouldn't leave her. Not the infected bits, but the part of her that was still there untouched. I wanted to mourn her. To tell how much she had affected me. Farewell, my love. Maybe tears would come later, but now there was a quest to continue. Maybe there was supplies in here to add to my bag. Chocolate. I love chocolate and she must have too. Biscuits and some bags of sweets. Flavored mineral water. A carving knife and some packets of add water and heat meals. I searched her wardrobe for another backpack. Of course it was pink and had flowers all over it, but I easily filled it. Money. Her bedside table gave some coins and a drawer found notes and her underwear. I forced the tears away. Now was not the time. He must have a car. If he did, the keys must be in his trousers. My nose now used to the stink, I was able to drag him around to investigate all his trouser pockets. His wallet brought a generous amount of notes and a photo of him standing in front of a white sports car. Not a modern one, more like an old classic machine. The keys were in the other side pocket, and his shirt revealed another wad of cash and a fancy cell phone that I pocketed. Better to use his ID than mine. With 2 flicks, the lights went dark. Still some daylight filtering through a partly open door that I assumed would be the small bathroom. The tiny window high up gave plenty of light for me to make an attempt to clean some of the blood from my sleeve as well as the screwdriver and then give my hands a good wash with soap. Nothing much there other than half a roll of paper to add to my supplies. 2 backpacks were too much to carry in one hand, so I fitted my own over my back and kept her pink one to carry in my hands with the screwdriver just inside the opening in case it was needed again quickly. Peeping through the door and seeing it empty before pushing it open fully and making along the passage toward the front door, his car keys in my hand. They weren't the sort that had a key alarm button, so I'd need to visually identify his car from the picture in his wallet. Cautiously I pushed the main complex door open, expecting crowds of frantic people with cars collided all over the street, but it looked almost normal. A couple of walkers in the distance and the usual cars parked on the roadside, but no white sports car. There was a parking area along one side of our building and he wouldn't have wanted to leave a car like that on the street for everyone to see. Bingo! Blocking another car's access, a scribbled handwritten note under the wiper giving someone's opinion of the driver's parking ability. That paper ripped away and the key tried in the door. Right car. Both backpacks on the passenger's side, then the key tried in the ignition, once I found where it was. I still didn't have a license and this didn't look like it was an automatic, but the car was cranking. I'm not sure how, but the motor was soon burbling and now there were gears to decipher. Only once before had I faced a manual gearbox, and that had proved that I didn't know how to work one. Trying again like my life depended on it, attempting to marry the diagram on the gearbox knob with the movement of the stick. Trying for reverse, but I knew enough to gently let the clutch out first to make sure I had the right gear. Everyone around must have thought the car was being stolen with my attempts, but no one came to check. Maybe they thought that no thief would be that bad at changing gears. Success. The car was purring backwards toward the roadway. I even managed to get it turned while I was backing so it was nearly ready to drive straight ahead, once I found first. By the way it took off, it wasn't first. Man, that car could move. Not sure where I should go and still trying to get a better feel of working the car, I just drove forward trying to get more at ease. Hardly anyone around, just a few other cars, and all stopped. No traffic lights working either. I seemed to be the only one moving. Learning to scan the gauges on the dash while I drove. Fuel on half full, that should be enough for a good way, but full would be even better, especially considering the distance ahead of me, so I looked for a convenience store. Fuel and more supplies and maybe turn some of the money in my card to real spending notes.